Red Film Radio, I'm David Martos. We are in the 79th edition of the Venice Film Festival, and we have the pleasure of being here with Bill Nighy, Mr. Bill Nighy, lead protagonist in Living Out of Competition here. Mr. Nighy, thank you very much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
How do you feel here in Venice? Are you enjoying the experience?
I feel very good in Venice. I love Venice. It's not PR. Everybody loves Venice. I've never been to the festival before.
Oh, really?
No, I've been to Venice, but not to the festival. So it's very, and for our film to be honored in this way is a big deal, and I am seriously grateful and impressed.
Mm-hmm. You told us in the press conference just minutes ago that you hadn't seen the original film prior to this project. Why and how did you say yes to this film, Bill?
I've made 3 films previously with Stephen Woolley and Elizabeth Carlson, who are the 2 great British film producers, and I love working with them and I trust them implicitly. And I had just met Kazuo Ishiguro, the internationally famous novelist, and had dinner with him, and I also obviously trust his taste and work. And the whole project was very attractive, and it made me feel like I was, that I must have been very good in a previous life, as I said in the press conference, because it was just one of those situations where you think, this is magnificent.
Mm-hmm. In the film we find, like, I would say, the essence of being British, the essence of the old empire. Was it one of the reasons to do this, like, portraying that era, that those people that worked in those big buildings?
Well, I'm very interested, like everybody, in procrastination, and the film is about several things, but one of them is procrastination, and I personally procrastinate at an Olympic level. I'm really, really good at it, and my life has been governed by it to a large degree, and I struggle. So this film is about a man, and what I'm interested in is the way that the individual struggle with procrastination is reflected in society. So societies struggle with procrastination, and there are institutions like the one in the film that are designed simply to prevent things from happening. Usually governmental, to do with governments. Governments procrastinate famously, And I'm very interested in the way that an individual tendency is expressed in a whole society, in all cultures. And it is the great corrosive element in our lives. And it prevents us on a personal level and on a collective level from doing the best we can and making the best of our lives.
And and how do you say this works in your life? How has it worked working in this industry? I mean, in the arts, in entertainment, in culture. There's room for procrastination there.
Yeah, there's room. You can always get some procrastination in. There's room, for instance, when I was a young actor, in not really acting, just making some kind of personal appearance and trying to appear as if you had some very complicated inner life, when in fact you're doing nothing, and not being brave enough. And therefore, it takes a degree of courage to act. It takes a degree of, it's not rocket science, but it does take a degree of personal courage. And you can delay that moment when you dare to really act, to do something that's outside of your comfort zone, to do something, maybe something quite small physically, whatever it might be in a rehearsal room. You can delay that moment and delay that moment, and if you delay that moment, it gets harder and harder and harder. It's like a phone call that you don't want to make. The phone call, if you postpone the phone call, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and harder to make. And that's kind of, that's how it's a way of, that's how the world operates. Nobody makes the phone call. All right, climate change, nobody made the phone call, Like, when are we going to make the phone call? Like, really make the phone call. Not like talk about the phone call and maybe when we should make it and who should make it and, what we're going to say when we get it. Just make the phone call.
So it's taking risks, right? What makes you get up and do a film?
It's delaying the moment when you take a risk. Yeah, that's that, and And as I say, there are institutions dedicated to that. If you've ever had any dealings with an insurance companies, they are trained to delay. They are trained to impede and prevent. It's part of their training. He's away from his office. He's on holiday presently. We can't quite find him. He's probably between phones. Whatever it might be, it's all strategic. And they want to delay the moment when their money becomes your money, because they want the interest on it, obviously. Right. So, I mean, there are all kinds of examples, but I'm more interested in on a personal level. For instance, this character only begins to really live when he's told that he won't be living for very long. And people do say that irritating thing of, why don't you live your life as if it's the last day of your life, which nobody can do. I've tried it. I mean, maybe some people can do it. I can't do it. And it's interesting that he initially tries to do that thing he's heard about, which is to have a good time. And then he discovers that's not going to work. And it has to have meaning. It has to be something with meaning. And then he attempts something more significant.
And when the character begins to live, he begins to talk, because you remain silent for the first part of the film.
Yeah, yes, and he finds someone he can talk to, and he's opened up completely because, because he has this ultimatum and because he hasn't got any time. So he is galvanized and he's able to cross barriers, talk to his boss in a way that he would never talk to his boss, approach his boss, defy the procrastinatory nature of the institution, and talk to a young person about his grief. He's also a man who's institutionalized in grief, and I find that very moving, obviously, and I find it, he lost his wife very early on, and he's built his life. His life is a monument to that loss, to that sense of grief that he lost the woman he loved. And I find that it's very moving. It's not, what they would now call healthy, but that's the way we are sometimes.
It's very true. It's been a really brief but pleasant talk to Bill Nighy. Thank you very much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Thank you. I'm David Martos. This is the 79th edition of the Venice Film Festival, and this is Fred, the Festival Insider. Fred Film Radio, I'm David Martos. We're in the 79th edition of the Mostra di Venezia, and we're here with Oliver Hermanus, director of Living. Hello, Oliver. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
Fine. You're bringing the movie here out of competition, and this is a very rare slot for a movie shot in Sundance. How do you feel?
I feel very lucky. I mean, I think I'm very grateful to Venice for letting us be here and inviting us and celebrating our film. But I do feel like I'm the kid that snuck in.
Why is that?
Because this is a festival that world premieres films, and we had a premiere in Sundance in January, but it was a virtual festival, so this feels like a premiere, very much like our premiere. But yes, we bent the rules here slightly.
Do you feel somehow like you are a son of Venice Film Festival, because Malfi was here and it had great reviews?
Definitely. This is actually my third film. My third film here. So it's been. Okay. I've come to Venice with most of my work now, so that probably means hopefully I'm a son.
Yeah. And how do you feel about that? Because, there are some directors that are related to some festivals, big names, big festivals help to build a career.
It's definitely a relationship. I feel that there's a relationship here with Venice. I feel that Alberto Barbara has really supported me and has encouraged me through selecting my work and making me as a filmmaker feel like I'm growing. And so there's definitely that experience of it. And I feel that, yes, when I make another film, my mind probably goes, I'd like to show that in Venice. So I think it works then.
Okay, so let's talk about Living. Your telephone rang at some point, and there was a project for you called Living, a remake of Kurosawa's film with Bill Nighy and Ishiguro involved. Yes. How did you feel, and why and how did you say yes to this project?
It just seemed crazy, really. Remake a Kurosawa, work with Bill Nighy. in a screenplay written by Kazuo Shigeru, it sort of sounds nuts, and you go like, well, yes, I'll definitely try and do that because it's just an exciting prospect. I mean, scary, but I never really felt like, oh no, I could never. I generally felt like I'd like to be part of that team.
So you translated the post-war Japan to Britain in 1953. How did you manage to capture the essence of Britishness, I would say?
Probably by observing British people. I watched a lot of films from the 50s and the 40s, a lot of Ealing Studios. Ishiguro was amazing at being a kind of well of knowledge, and he was able to feed me things and, really expose me to what he felt were the works that sort of celebrated that period, but also the sort of style of British cinema. And you can really see that in the way that I sort of made living. I incorporated a lot of elements that I feel are celebrating of the 50s.
And what about Bill Nighy? Because directing him can be, I think, a challenge and a pleasure at the same time.
Absolutely, every actor, acting is an art form, and so to collaborate with an artist like that is just an opportunity. And I've been saying to people, in the preparation for this process with Bill, spending time with Bill, it was like watching an actor prepare, but you're also sort of seeing somebody who's so experienced and so instinctive and so talented at what they do. And it was a privilege, and it was something that I will always keep because I don't think every actor is like Bill. Bill has a particular kind of sensory experience of acting that I think is very special.
What kind of relationship did you two build up for the set? How did you relate on the set?
For me, sets are always about protection. I like to make the actors feel that this is a creative space for them, and it's ultimately we're shooting performances. So I try to keep it as tight as I can for them, and that was the same for Bill, just making sure that he felt free. But he's again so experienced that he knows how to kind of adjust to things. My job is to just sort of keep them all focused and let them, be instinctive and intuitive in all of their performing.
Okay, and from now on, I wonder how the life of the film is going to be.
Who knows? I mean, we
have a release planned in
of course, we have
Europe.
We have releases all over Europe and America, and this is like a film for me that I think is hopefully a film that will just make people feel really good and will be something that hopefully they'll watch more than once, because maybe my egotistical ambition is that it's something that people will come back to because of the way that it makes them feel.
Okay, I'm sure they will. So this is the interview for Fred, the Festival Insider. We've been with Oliver Hermanus, director of Living, here Out of Competition. Oliver, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And as I said, I'm David Martos, and this is Fred, the Festival Insider.